Hello there. How are you, sixth grade? I hope you had a good weekend. All right, so let's talk about what a histogram is and how to represent data on a histogram. Look at this example. Um, Here's a table, and this table shows the number of minutes 25 students spent reading for pleasure one day. Okay, um, so we have 25 students here, and each student represents one in the frequency here. Okay, and these are the number of minutes that they spend reading. So one student spends between 180 to 209 minutes reading in one day for pleasure. Wow, that's like um, over 3 hours. And then another student here spends between 0 to 29 minutes reading a day for pleasure. Okay, and you can see, oh, it looks like a lot of students here, seven, spend 90 between 90 to 119 minutes, almost between 1.5 to almost 2 hours reading um, for pleasure in one day. Okay, so that's what this chart means here. And notice here it's different than a dot plot, right? Because a dot plot gives you an exact number of minutes, right? Okay, but here they give you an interval, okay? And notice these intervals, they do not overlap, okay? It's continuous. This is 0 to 29, then 30 to 59, 60 to 89, 90 to 119, 120 to 149, 150 to 179, 180 to 209. So it's between 0 all the way to 209, like continuous, without any break, right? Um, and what's the value of the interval here? 0 to 29. You might think it's 29, right? Because I'm guessing you're doing, oh, it's just 29 minus 0, okay? That's what you're doing, I'm guessing, okay, to find the interval. It's 29 minus 0, which is 29 minutes, okay? But actually, it counts the 0, okay? So it counts the value of 0 minutes, then 1 minute, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and all the way to 29. So in fact, it is an interval of 30 minutes. Okay, it's actually an interval of 30 minutes when we count the 0. Okay, and so this is 30 minutes, this is 30 minutes, this is 30 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 minutes. And we're counting the starting point here, 30 minutes, 31, 32, 33, all the way to 59 minutes. Here we're counting 60 minutes, 61, 62, 63, all the way to 89 minutes, okay? So be careful about creating intervals when you determine, oh, this is the interval I want to use, and then writing the interval in your frequency chart and also on your histogram, okay? So now that we are understanding our table here, let's translate this table into a histogram. Now, to draw a histogram that displays the information, frequency always goes on the left here, okay? It always goes on the y-axis. And then our intervals goes on the x-axis here. Now notice here, it's not just going to be one mark here is going to be 0 to 29, okay? They're going to show you an interval of 0 to 29, okay? So let's take a look, okay? So 0 to 29, there was only one student here. So we draw a bar from this interval all the way up to 1, the frequency 1, because on our table, that's what it says. Our next interval is going to be from 30 to 59, and our bar will be going up to frequency 3. Ta-da! Our next interval is from 60 to 89, and our bar is gonna go up to 5. So it's gonna shoot past this bar here, and definitely shoot past this part here, okay? And now our interval of 90 to 119 is our bar is going to reach all the way up to 7. Ta-da! Our next bar is will go to 5, and our interval is 120 to 149. Okay, so it goes up to 5 here. Okay. And then our next one, 150 to 179, our bar will reach up to 3 over here. And then finally our last piece of information, our interval of 180 to 209. There's only one, so we're going to just draw the bar that goes up to 1 here. So again, notice we're using bars because each bar represents the interval between 0 to 29, 30 to 59, and so forth. Okay, so that's the bar that represents that interval. This bar represents that interval, and that bar represents this interval, and so forth and so forth. Okay? Again, these are equal intervals as we figured out because it's an interval of 30, okay, between, yes, interval of 30 minutes, okay, and in a histogram, they use intervals, and they usually break the data into intervals when there's a large piece of data, okay. And notice again, there's nothing that goes in between the bars here because there's no gaps between the bars because again, our intervals are like this, or they're continuous, 0 to 29, then we go to 30. We don't go 0 to 29, 29 to, you know, the next number, 58, and so on, right? We go to the next number, 0 to 29, then the next one up is 30, then 30 to 59, 59, the next one up is 60, okay? All right, okay, so now I think you guys have the basics to create a histogram. So why don't you practice, okay? Look at these tables, and why don't you create histograms that represents the tables in numbers 1 and 2, and I'll be waiting. Hi again. All right, so number 1. So we're drawing a graph about the number of fish caught, the number of fish and how long they were, okay? And so your histogram, let me just make my chart or my video a tad bigger so you guys can see. Yeah, okay. So here, okay, my frequency is here on the y-axis, which is the number of fish, okay? And then my interval is here. It's on the x-axis, so it's length of fish. So I drew these intervals, and let me see. So for the first interval, 51 through 60, okay? So that is, I was going to use my green, which is here. Okay, so 51 through 60 is 4, so my frequency 4. All right, and notice here, when I started it, I put a little break mark here because it's gonna automatically jump to 51, okay? It doesn't start at 0, so it jumps to 51, so I just put a little break mark in my x-axis, okay? And then 61 through 70, it's 5, so let's see, how am I gonna draw it, which is up here. Okay. And I really recommend using a graph paper to draw your histogram. It'll make your life so much easier. Yeah, the lines on the grid are really helpful for you to draw neat histograms. Okay, our next piece of information, 71 to 80, there's 7. So let's see. I think that's a 7. Okay. And then 81 to 90, let me see that, what is that? 81 to 90 is 4. Okay. So 81 to 90 is 4, which is here. Okay. And 91 to 100 is, let me just move my video, 2. 91 to 100 is 2, which is here. Okay. And then finally 101 to 110 is 4. Okay. 101 to 110 is 4, which is right here. All right, so this is my histogram, okay? How does yours compare to mine? I hope it looks similar or the same. That'll be great. Okay. All right, and again, there's no gap in between these bars because it goes from 51 to 60, 61 to 70, 71 to 80, and so forth. Okay. All right. Now, let's look at number 2, and I'm going to just move my screen up a tad. Okay. It says here, the scores obtained by 40 students in a mathematics quiz are recorded in the table below. So we have scores and our frequency, okay? And so it should look something like this, your grid. And frequency is always on the y-axis, okay? And scores here, and I put a little break here just to show that I didn't want to put my 1 really close to the 1 mark, so I just kind of put a break to show I'm going to move it over here, okay? And so let's draw our frequency chart with this information, okay? So how many students scored between 1 and a 2 on a quiz? That's 8. Okay, so where's my 8? My 8 is right here. Here we go. And then how many scored between 3 and a 4? That's 8. Okay. What about between a 5 and a 6? Ooh, that's 10. Okay. What about between a 7 and an 8? That's 9. And then between a 9 and a 10, that's 5. Okay, I'm guessing 10 is the highest point on the quiz that you can take. Okay, so this is the histogram. How does your histogram compare to here? I hope it looks the same. All right. I'm just gonna move this video screen down a tad. I really like the shuffle dance. Okay, good job. All right, let's now determine, well, how do we choose the right kind of interval with the data we have to create a histogram, okay? And so let's take a look at this example here. So the data here shows the heights in inches of students in a class. Ooh, okay. So how many students do I have? I have 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 times 4 is 40. So I have 40 students, okay? And what I want to do is I want to try to find, your goal is to answer these 3 questions, okay? And before you get started, let's find the range. The range of data is you take the greatest value minus the lowest value. So the greatest value here, okay, I find is 73, and the lowest value I find is 50, okay, when I examine the data. And so let's find the range, okay? So the range is 73 minus 50, which is 23. Now, question A says group the data into 4 intervals, okay? And so you want to display the data in a histogram. And so basically, you're going to see, so these are the number of intervals that you want, okay? And then, so you're going to divide it by 4 because that's the number of intervals that you want. And then you're going to see kind of how wide, what is your interval exactly, okay? So can I do 23 divided by 4 and get a whole number? No, I'm going to get a decimal, right? So instead of 23 divided by 4, let's round up. So if we round up to 24, 24 divided by 4 is 6, okay? So each interval will be 6, okay? 6 inches long, all right? And there's going to be 4 intervals. And so let's take a look here, okay? So here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 intervals. And again, this is 6 inches long, okay? Or the span of data is from 6 inches. And again, you might think, wait a minute, but it's 55 and 50. So if I do 55 minus 50, like this, I get 5, not 6. But remember, we're not counting that, okay? We're counting the pieces of data. So that's 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces of data, right? So it spans 6 inches, okay? And so same thing here, okay? Again, Now I didn't write 55 to another number because I already used 55 here. I have to use the next number up, which is 56, okay? And then 6 pieces of data is 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61. So that's 6 pieces of data, right? 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61. That's 6 pieces of data, okay? And same thing here and here, okay? And then when you also look at the data here, you can just see how many fall between 50 to 55, how many fall between 56 to 61, and so forth and so forth. And you can just cross it off and mark it on here. Now after that, we got to draw our histogram, okay? And so our histogram is going to look like this. Again, there's 4 intervals, 1, 2, 3, 4. And each interval spans 6 inches here, okay? And again, we start from here. They started the data here at this point, and they just marked this 50 to 55, which you can do as well. You don't have to do a little break mark like I did. And then the frequency is on the y-axis, okay? And so here's our data, okay? Let's see, 50 to 55, is it 1? I guess, yeah, that's a third of the way from 3. And then 56 to 61, that's at 13 here. 62 to 67, that's at 18. And from here to here, that's at 8, I guess. Yeah. All right. So now B says we want to group the data into 8 intervals, and we're going to display the data in a histogram. And again, we're going to use the range from part A. The range was 23. And we're going to divide it by 8 because that's the number of intervals I want. And again, if I do 23 divided by 8, I don't get a whole number. So let's round up. We're going to always round up. If we round down, we might exclude a value from our data that's in here. Okay, so we always want to include our biggest data. So we're going to always try to round up if we can. Okay, so the closest number that rounds up that can be easily divided by 8 and get a whole number is 24. Okay, so 24 divided by 8 is 3. Okay, so each interval, it'll represent 3 inches or 3 pieces of data. Okay, so notice here, it's 50, 51, 52. So that's 3 pieces of data. 53, 54, 55. That's 3 pieces of data. 56, 57, 58, that's 3 pieces of data, and so forth, okay? And now we can see, well, okay, here only one person is between 50 to 52 inches, 0 people are between 53 to 55 inches, and so forth. And let's represent this on a histogram. Ta-da, here it is. Let me just move my piece over here, okay? All right, so notice here, I see, oh, there's a gap. Remember I said there shouldn't be a gap because the data is continuous? It is. This shows a continuous piece of data. But notice here, how come there's nothing written here, no bar here, between 53 to 55? Because in our table, between 53 to 55, there's 0 students. So there is a piece of data here. It's just at the 0 mark. So it looks like there's nothing, okay? So this is the correct histogram that represents this table. All right. Okay. Now it says to compare the 2 histograms. So let's put them side by side. Okay. Here's histogram A and here's histogram B. What do you notice? Well, it took less time to draw histogram A because there were just 4 intervals, right? And oh, you didn't have to spread out the data too much or do too much math in your head to separate the intervals, right? In your table. And then what else do you notice? It looks like it's really clear from the second piece of data with 8 intervals, which one is the outlier? Outlier is a piece of data that stands apart from the rest, right? Can you find the outlier in the second histogram? It's right here, isn't it? It's actually our lowest value of 50 here. 50 inches is our outlier here, okay? And so we can see that when we have, the more intervals we have to represent in a histogram, the better it is for us to gauge and interpret the data. Okay? From this piece, from this histogram, there's less intervals, and we can see, oh, this is kind of, a lot less than the other pieces of data here, right? But this histogram, which has more intervals, clearly shows us, this piece of data is an outlier, okay? Yeah, okay. So there's that information from the book. You can just pause the video and read it if you want, and that's an explanation of the outlier, okay? All right, please do guided practice number 4 on your own, and let's see what you get, okay? All right, I'll be waiting. How was it? Oh, it's a little tedious, isn't it? Yeah. Um, so I actually tried to do guided practice number 3 for you on a board, and it was fine. I was going through it, but I just felt like it just wasn't relevant to what you know as kids in terms of cholesterol levels, and so that's why I really wanted us to do guided practice number 4, because you've been in cars before and you know what it means for our car to be speeding and not speeding, or driving the correct speed on a highway or on the road, right? Okay. Now this example, it actually uses kilometers instead of miles. Okay. So just realize that in the U.S. we don't use kilometers, we use miles. Um, but here are the speeds of 40 cars on a highway that were recorded over here. And we're going to group the data into suitable intervals and tabulate them. And we're going to explain our choice of intervals, okay? And so first, to figure out like where to start with the intervals, we should always find the range. And to find the range, we have to find the greatest value, subtract the lowest value. So when I look at my data, I found, okay, 88 kilometers per hour was the greatest speed, and my lowest speed was 51 kilometers per hour, okay? And so when let me just, sorry, okay, make this bigger. Okay. And then so when I figured out the range, I got this, right? 88 minus 51 is 37, okay? Now, from 37, I want to think about, well, how many intervals do I want, okay? What makes sense? Well, first of all, 37 is a prime number, so it's not really easily divided. You can't divide it you can divide it by itself or by 1, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to round up. I'm going to round up to a number that I like, which is 40, okay? So it's approximately 40, okay? Now from here, what I want is, you know what? I think I want an interval where the length of the interval is 5 kilometers per hour, okay? And for me to get 5 kilometers per hour, I have to divide it by 8, right? So I'm going to have 8 intervals where the span between each interval is going to be 5 kilometers per hour. And the reason why I chose 5 kilometers per hour, I was thinking, when we speed, let's say it says on the highway you have to go 65 miles per hour. Now, usually they say, you can go at most over or under plus or minus 5, depending on the miles per hour. Any more than that, you might kind of be too slow or too fast. That's the general rule of thumb. And so I thought, well, I'm going to just translate that same rule to kilometers, okay? Where I want to see the difference in kilometers of 5 kilometers per hour between each interval. So then I can see, who is speeding and who's not speeding, who's going at the right speed. And so that's why these numbers work out nicely when I rounded 37 up to 40, and then I wanted to get 5. So 40 divided by what gets me 5 is 8. So I'm going to have 8 pieces of data, or 8 separate intervals, okay? So this is what my frequency chart looks like, okay? At the top here, my frequency table. So again, 50 to 54, that's 5 pieces of data, right? So 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, okay? So that's good. And then here, let's look at the last one, 85 to 89. That's 5 pieces of data, right? 85, 86, 87, 88, 89. Yes, okay? So again, just be careful when you create the chart, all right? And then now we're going to draw our histogram. Okay? And our histogram should look something like this. Okay? So here's our histogram, okay, with the frequency here and then our speed here. All right. And I notice here that my 88 is my outlier because I see here at all the other intervals they have like at least 2 cars that were driving at that speed, but we only had one car that was driving between 85 to 89, which is 88 kilometers per hour. Okay, so that would be an outlier. All right, well, that's all for today, and I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow on the video. Bye.